Struggling with weight that doesn't respond to traditional dieting? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is a clinically developed nutrition program designed to promote fat loss while protecting lean body mass. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, it assists the body in entering a fasting-like state that helps reset metabolism, target visceral fat, and supports healthy metabolic markers. In just 5 days, Prolon offers a structured, science-backed approach to weight loss without extreme restriction or guesswork. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/today.
Hello and welcome to episode 308 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, the world's biggest battery maker responds to BYD's amazing battery advancements with its own amazing battery advancements. And I'll respond why this will change the world in very positive ways.
New research suggests clean energy is growing faster than new electricity demand. And that's saying a lot because we know demand for power is growing very fast. Data centers are the main culprit. The second culprit is James, who insists on having a microwave that can nuke his mac and cheese in half a second.
I will not wait for macaroni, Brian. Auto Trader UK says electric vehicles are now 750 pounds cheaper than combustion vehicles. This is big news that we've been anticipating to happen since the launch of our long-running podcast. Speaking of long-running, we'll also talk about those half-marathon running humanoid robots. Mostly because our new overlords demanded that we do that. All hail the robots! Everyone hide while you can.
Local researchers have figured out how to keep air source heat pumps defrosted in the winter. I won't get into the details here of how it works, but at the end of the process, you get to eat a delicious snow cone.
All that more in this edition of The Clean Energy Show. And also this week, new nuclear and solar cost comparison, this time not from me, but from an actual academic institution. And I do consider myself an academic institution, or at least an institution. I'm an institution. This podcast is an institution.
You are. You're an institution. All right, I want to talk about Los Angeles for a quick second. So I was in Los Angeles about a year ago, and before I went, and I mentioned this on the podcast, I checked to see if you could take a train from LAX, the main airport. And the answer was no, but what I didn't know was it was just around the corner. I only missed it by a few months. So this has been open for quite a while now, but you can now take a transit train from LAX. Did you know that?
I had no idea about that. I don't think I heard about that. If I have, I've forgotten.
The downside is the People Mover is still not running. So this is an automated train that's going to run between the terminals. And they're doing testing on it, but it's not actually running yet. And these things have been delayed for a long time. And it's unfortunate it's not running. But right now, I think there's shuttle buses that can get you to the transit center. But then once you get to the transit center at LAX, you can take a train out of there. It's great.
It's mostly above ground, this train. And where does it go?
Well, it'll take you to LA Union Station, which I guess is kind of downtown. So
that's quite a ways.
It is, yeah. The other downside is you may have to change trains at some point because LA is very huge and sprawling. So unless you're needing to go kind of right downtown. So I did it in Google Maps based on the hotel that I stayed at the last time I was there. And in fact, yes, I would have to take 2 different trains to get there. And it would be slightly longer than taking a car, according to Google in any case, which is unfortunate. But, depends on where you want to go. Riding the train is still more pleasant, even if you have to take trains and even change them, and even if it takes a little longer. So, I might still do that.
You might, but I think a lot of people will look at the time and say, I'll just drive. I'll get a rental car or...
Yeah.
If you're local and you're coming back from a trip, you might drive. You might get picked up. I don't know. But do you know what time of the day you did this test on Google Maps?
No, I don't remember. It was probably early morning when I looked it up.
Okay.
But,
well, it might be very different than, early morning is very different than most of the day.
Yeah, rush hour. Maybe the car would take longer, but I just find it more pleasant to take the train with a cab. You don't know what kind of a driver you're going to get. Sometimes they're, absolute maniacs and the ride can be very unpleasant. Other times it's fine. So, who knows? But that was good progress I didn't know about.
Yeah, and trains are pleasant. I above ground I actually prefer because you can look around and you're in daylight. You're not in a tunnel when everything echoing around you. It's a lot more pleasant to be traveling by train. So you can stop, right, to get off on a subway somewhere relatively close to LAX, I imagine, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a normal subway. There's many different stops along the way.
All right. Well, that's nice.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about, CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, had an interview this week. And he basically said what we covered last week from Honda and Toyota, who said, we give up. We can't compete against the Chinese automakers. And this is exactly what Jim Farley said. And he said similar things in the past. But, this was a definitive statement. He said, we should not let them into our country. That was his thought about this.
So this is where Jim Farley is. It's like, I give up. I throw in the towel. We're obviously, because they're trying to make EVs from ground up now to compete.
Yeah.
And now this is what we're hearing after a year of that. Sorry, it's not going to happen. We should not let them in because my company sucks.
Yeah, they're kind of on their, I'd call, second generation of EVs at Ford there. And they have made quite a few and they have sold quite a few, but they know they're not doing it profitably. And he said in the interview that China has enough capacity to build over 50 million vehicles a year, which would cover all the need for the U.S. That's a massive amount of vehicles. So he knows if they were let in unfettered, it would absolutely wipe them out.
So a lot of Chinese automakers, there's a downturn in China now for the economy, and they're not selling as many. They're trying to export more. I've heard factories that could do 50% more than they are. I've heard about factories that can do twice as much as they are.
Yeah.
And we always talked, people said, well, you can't go make the world's EVs. There's not enough batteries for it. The Chinese are not having that problem.
Yeah.
If they are, we haven't heard about it, but there is no battery capacity problem whatsoever in China that we know of.
Yeah. Their problem at the moment seems to be they can't export to every country in the world because that's absolutely what they want to do.
Well, I think that's pretty alarming, actually, this statement. You can say that the Chinese government subsidizes their automakers.
Yeah.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Europe said that. And Europe has like a 35%, whatever they figured actually makes sense for each particular automaker based on subsidies and so forth.
Yeah. And that's the point of tariffs. Like you can do the math and you can kind of figure it out and kind of come up with a figure that might make it fair. And tariffs exist in lots of different industries. And it's usually based on, some particular sector that's getting some type of subsidy. So, exporting those to another country is maybe not fair, but you just do the math. You add a tariff, usually a few percent is all it needs. And, this stuff can be worked out. But, I guess they're arguing for more time. Like Ford, they want more time to get their
the climate has all kinds of time, Jim, all kinds of time. Take your time.
But say they're given 10 more years of protection. Is that enough for them to turn this around and actually make profitable EVs?
Well, what also concerns me is he's using the excuse of Chinese technology, the roads of North America going back to the Chinese government.
Yes.
That's concerning when you start bringing that up. I mean, there's solutions around that. We know that. TikTok was one of those things, right?
Yeah.
If they could fix TikTok, can't they fix this issue as well?
It is a potentially, possibly a genuine issue. And once those cars are autonomous as well, it's like, well, that there's a possible robot army there, I suppose. But yeah, one would think that safeguards could be introduced.
All right, Brian, I know you welcome our robot overlords, but a humanoid robot just ran a half marathon faster than any human has. And you'd have to be under a rock to not know this, but I understand you didn't know this.
No, I didn't know this, and I'm very proud of that fact. My news filter is getting very good. I'm not being bombarded by
okay, Brian. Well, let me say this. One day there's going to be a humanoid robot knocking on your door. What are you going to do then? It's going to be a big surprise.
I welcome it in and pour it some tea.
Yeah, then he'll just turn you into energy or something. So this was a robot in China. It ran a half marathon faster than any human, and this is with pit stops.
Yeah.
Because I thought the batteries aren't going to last that long, the current battery technology for these human, which are running alarmingly fast. You watch these guys run, these robots run, it's frightening because they could outrun you and chase you down and do things to you. Whatever robots want to do to humans, kill them. I don't know. So it's alarming, but they had to have pit stops, not only for battery changes, which were 2 batteries in this video that I found finally just before the show of 2 sort of half loaves of bread being swapped out. They did that almost instantly, like as fast as you can take out 2 bricks and put in 2 more bricks and watch the robot go. But they also had to pour ice in its backpack, so I don't know if that's running through a cooling loop, which it might, or it might just be cooling a processor on the robot's abdomen. But also they're spraying ice and dry ice, supposedly with some robots, on their joints because the joints kept overheating. And I guess they knew this. This was a small, or at least a cell phone maker that I didn't understand or haven't heard of before. They made this robot who won the race.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this is a huge improvement over last year, by the way. But the fact that they beat the human record is quite amazing. But they sprayed its joints with water spray to keep it from overheating at its joints, which is kind of what I would do.
Yeah.
If I was running a marathon and I had a team of people to spray my joints with ice water, I think I would do much better. I wouldn't do as fast as this robot, though. And I have a clip here, an audio clip of the robot coming in for a pit stop. I don't know how many pit stops they took, but they had to come in for pit stops for a battery swap and de-icing, or icing, I guess.
Oh, my joints. Oh, that feels good. Yeah, baby. Kill all humans.
Oh, I guess that was inevitable.
That took a turn there.
It did. Yeah, well, if you saw how fast they ran, you would be very concerned. Yeah, so 50 minutes and 26 seconds, breaking the world record by a human by 7 minutes for a half marathon.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning of humanoid robots, Brian. This is my concern. One thing we talk about on the show is the trajectory of both economics and technological development.
Yes.
My God, if this is what happened over last year where they didn't even finish, I don't think. Oh, and by the way, this robot, they're remote controlled. They're not, can't tell it to run a half marathon and get back to me.
Sure.
There's a team of people chasing it in a vehicle to ice it up and to change the batteries and if it falls down and they're also controlling it like a remote controlled car. But that remote control was lost after it crossed the finish line and it ran full speed into a barrier. It fell over, which was also hilarious and was shown even more on the internet than.
Okay, that reminds me of a couple of things. First of all, there's a fantastic documentary of the 1964 Olympics, which were in Tokyo. It's called Tokyo Olympiad. It's a great sprawling documentary that covers all the main events of the Olympics that year, and they do quite a lot of the marathon. So there's extensive coverage of the marathon in 1964, and it's wild because some of the participants actually stopped to eat a sandwich during the race. I had no idea this is what it used to be like.
The full sandwich. Was there garnishes involved? Was there a
just
napkin?
A few bites of something, and then they would have these tables with glasses of water and little snacks on it, and some of them would just grab the water and keep running.
Yeah.
Others would actually stop, have a sip, have a few bites of a sandwich or whatever, and then start running. So I guess my point is that robots are now at the point where humans were. The 1964 Olympics, they sometimes have to take a pit stop.
Well, 50 minutes is not even an hour.
Yeah.
How are you going to digest anything for a half marathon?
Yeah.
Unless you're a robot and you can put in new batteries, you don't have a digestive system. It instantly goes into your system.
Yes.
I do see people eating a marathon sometimes, like power bars or something.
Yeah.
But they're probably taking 7 hours to complete it as well.
Yeah.
I would take a full day to do that if I even managed to.
The training has really improved, obviously, for marathons.
The Olympics.
Because anytime...
The Olympics aren't going to take as long as James, though. Let's be clear. It would be much faster than that.
But
presumably a couple of hours.
Back in those days, everybody would take way longer to finish the marathon, and they'd be basically dead at the end of the race and collapse and fall over and need to be carried off on a stretcher. And now they do marathons in much less time, and, they seem kind of okay at the end of it. But that also reminds me of Formula E racing, and I haven't checked in on it in a few years, but when I first looked into it, they would swap out cars because the batteries wouldn't last long enough for a full car race. So each Formula E team would have, 2 or 3 cars, and they would have to swap them out during the race. So I don't know if that still goes on, but batteries are one of the issues here.
I actually have the marathon records over time.
Oh, yeah.
This is kind of off topic here, but I'll do it anyway. 2 hours and 55 minutes in 1908 by an American named Johnny Hayes. So we started at just under 3 hours. And where are we now?
Yeah.
If I scroll down, it's getting smaller and smaller. and it's just over 2 hours in October 8th, 2023, was 2 hours and 35 seconds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've improved about 50% almost.
Yeah, from 3 hours to 2 hours. The other thing I'll mention is, because I've seen a lot of these Olympics documentaries, and I believe it was the late 50s, the guy who won did it in bare feet. That was the other thing.
In the 50s?
Yeah, in up to the 50s, yeah. There was a guy who won in bare feet.
Where was he from?
I forget. We'll have to look it up, but yeah, up to the 50s, some guy won in bare feet.
Wow. There was a barefoot running fad.
Yeah.
I forget when it was. If was it in the 90s or the 2000s, perhaps?
Yeah.
And then Nike and the shoemakers are making these almost like gloves for your feet that were like running. You know, the thing was humans were made to run in our bare feet.
Yeah.
That's how we evolved, and we haven't evolved to the shoes yet.
Yeah, there's a theory that we all should do more of that because our feet might get ruined by these high-tech shoes that take all of the brunt, and, you know, our feet don't learn how to walk normally anymore. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, you know how there was that computer that used to play chess against humans, Deep Blue, I believe it was called?
Right. When was that? Late 90s, I think.
Well, yeah, I don't know, a couple of decades ago. And it finally got to the point where Deep Blue could beat a human. And there was a very famous match, possibly against Kasparov. And, you know, this was a huge deal at the time. But I was watching the Dr. Know-It-All YouTube channel, and he made a nice point about this, which was that was exciting to see a computer beat a human for the first time. But now
it was alarming.
But now that computers are better at chess than humans, no one's going to watch a match of two computers play each other in chess. That's not inherently interesting. So at this moment, yes, it's very interesting to see a robot try and beat a human in a marathon, but I don't think we're going to be watching, you know, there's not going to be a robot Olympics, I don't think, in the future.
I think there'll be robot competitions.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think if they have a half marathon where the robots can also fight each other at any point during the track, the people would watch that.
Yeah.
I'm trademarking that. I'm going to get on the laptop and trademark that as soon as I can and put a patent on that baby, because that's a good idea. And I think people would watch. There's those little robots that fight each other with swinging hammers and things.
Yeah.
That still goes on, but it's not.
That's true, yeah.
It's not that huge. The people still want to see people, because we'll never identify with robots, hopefully. Well, we probably will. They'll have personalities and be more charming than us at some point. So I wanted to update the BYD coming to Canada, because there was talk of the Blade 2 batteries not being in the cheaper vehicles. They hadn't announced that yet. They'd only announced their luxury vehicles. This new Blade 2 battery, which charges, a lot of it charges in 5 minutes, and I think it's like 9 minutes to get all the way to 98%, which is really impressive because you don't usually charge past 80% fast in an electric car. And they also charge fast down to minus 30 in 3 more minutes, 12 minutes. So it's really, really good. And the charging curve, even with our current chargers, would make it outdo the charging speed of current cars in our North American market and most European cars, of course. Starting around $39,000 if it comes to Canada. People are estimating these cars. They're very excited about them coming. So a lot of people are trying to estimate what they are.
Yeah.
Some of them, the Atto 3 is a small SUV. It's also known as the UN Plus in China. This is a very popular car in Europe and popular in Australia. And I think it's around 39 or 40,000 Australian dollars there. So that's what they think it's going to be in Canada, but we'll have to see what happens. Slightly smaller than a Tesla Model Y, but a Model Y is a pretty decent. You have one. I mean, that's a decent sized car, right?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, that's big enough for most people.
Well, that's coming, and they are putting it in that very popular car that is exported overseas, and we'll hear about other cars too that are coming. So yeah, we will see that technology come, and that's a big deal because we were speculating about that. Yesterday, my son in university outside of town here said that he paid $110 to fill up our SUV, which we used to use for towing our camper, and we have it sitting around on our driveway. He's plated it, put license and insurance on it, and is using it for a while for his last year of college, and $110 for 360 kilometers of range that he drove in the last month. And by comparison, that would my Bolt goes 417 kilometers. And, he did some winter driving. It was kind of wintry weather, unfortunately, for that drive, and it was warming up, so that's not a fair comparison. But my Bolt could go well over its EPA range of 417 on a nice spring day in the city, because the city, you get regenerative braking, you hit the brakes, it charges up your battery. So $10, $9, $8 by comparison to 110. He does use premium gas, I should point out, because it's old Acura.
The last time I sort of did the math, it sort of seemed like electricity for my electric car was about 1/4 the cost of gas, but gas has gone up a lot since then. So, 1/4 the cost of gas is kind of the worst case scenario at this point. But, as the cost of gas goes up, this is a huge, huge deal. Moving on to a story from The Guardian. Research from Ember tells us that clean energy met all the needs of electricity demand increase in 2025. We know that demand for electricity is going through the roof. This is mostly from AI data centers, but also things like electric cars, which are, being deployed around the world at a massive rate. Electricity generation from fossil fuels fell slightly, 0.2%. So basically flat for electricity generation from fossil fuels in 2025. Solar power was the biggest of the clean energy to meet this new demand. 3/4 of it was from solar in 2025. The rest mostly from wind, and then a little bit from batteries. 14% of the solar power came from batteries, because we know grid storage batteries are being deployed to capture that solar during the day and output it at night. So solar, wind, and batteries met the increases in demand in 2025 and left fossil fuels flat, which was a very big deal. And half of the increase in clean energy came from China, which we mention a lot on the show. They are, of course, deploying clean energy at a massive scale. And there's a great quote here from the managing director of Ember, who did this study. "We have firmly entered the era of clean growth. Clean energy is now scaling fast enough to absorb rising global electricity demand, keeping fossil generation flat before its inevitable decline. The momentum we are seeing is no longer just an ambition. It is becoming a structural reality."
And it's largely due to not altruism, but to economics. Companies are making money adding power to the grid. And a lot of people think that, this is going to be a nuclear renaissance. And we'll talk about that at the end of the show. The price comparison. Nuclear is slow. I mean, we need to be making a lot of nuclear for it to come down in price. And so far, we haven't seen that. We have seen a resurgence, but we haven't seen green on one design, whether it be a small modular or a large full-scale nuclear, which they're talking about where we live. Yeah, they have to settle on something and then start building it, getting people trained, but that's a slow process.
Yeah.
And we need to decarbonize our electricity in the world by 2035 in order to have a chance of coming close to the Paris targets.
And solar power is now the cheapest form of electricity, basically, that has ever existed. And it's not perfect because, it's got to be during the day and there's got to be some sun shining or decent cloudy day to get power out of it, but it doesn't have to be perfect if it's the cheapest, and then you start adding batteries, and then it quickly becomes kind of the perfect form of energy.
I think what we're seeing here is wind. There's been policy in the United States that has obliterated wind, at least slowing it down. Even here in Canada and in Alberta, they've done that with all kinds of renewables. But what I see happening here is solar plus batteries is outcompeting wind.
Yeah.
Wind is a nice thing because it blows at night, and it blows on cloudy days. And it's a nice mixture when you have a mixture of them.
Yeah.
Then you need less solar and you need less batteries. But batteries are coming down in price. And 14% is actually, caught my eye. That's pretty good for now. And it's only going to get better as batteries, they're proven now. So they're being added to grids a lot faster when they have smart people running those grids. And that's going to, we're talking about 2 hours of storage and then went to 4 and 6 and 8. And it's expanding where batteries can really do a lot. They're doing a lot in California. So that's good news. The average new UK electric car price is now lower than petrol vehicles. combustion vehicles are more expensive to buy than an EV. And this is something we've been saying is going to happen. Everybody knew in this space that it was going to happen. It was when?
Yeah.
When's it going to happen? Well, in the UK, at least, seems to be happening. Now, we used to talk about, luxury vehicles. If you compare the most expensive vehicles, they were cheaper to buy an EV. We also talked about cost of ownership.
Yeah.
When you buy a vehicle, it's not just the price tag. It's like, how much is it going to cost to maintain and gas that sucker?
Yeah, and when I bought my first electric car, the Model 3, it was kind of expensive, more than I really wanted to pay, but I was doing the math comparing it to something like a Toyota Camry over a 10-year period, and it was kind of coming out the same.
And now I think that gets better. That comparison gets better now. Plus, Camrys, I remember when that comparison was out, Camrys were like 10, 12 grand cheaper then than they are now. They've gone way up. All Toyotas have gone way up in price after the pandemic. So, and that makes, hybrid not a great price comparison anymore. Depends where gas prices are going. They could tank. But Auto Trader UK says the average EV cost is £785 cheaper than gas and diesel vehicles on average. Now, this is taking into account sales and discounts and government incentives. But it is an important milestone in the move away from fossil fuels. I was planning to talk about this on this week's show, but I also got an email from one of our many Bobs. Bob Eaton said we should talk about this. So, hi, Bob. We are. Based on advertised prices, this is what this is, after discounts. So, this is just advertised prices. This isn't necessarily the deal you can supposedly walk away from. Sometimes they'll put cash on the hood, as they say in North America. But once you own them, they're usually cheaper to run, and fuel and maintenance savings is pretty cheap. Now things are shifting fast. This is the United Kingdom. 22% of new car sales in the first 3 months of the year are EVs so far this year. It's a big jump. It's real momentum. Prices are dropping because, like I said, there's like £37.50 off some models, not all models, but some models. Automakers are slashing prices because they have to hit EV sales targets. That's the ZEV sales mandates that we like. More competition now. When we started the show, not a lot of competition. Now there's competition, especially cheaper EVs coming from China are, well, we know that, but they're making a big difference. Platforms like AutoTrader are seeing the trend clearly, and they think we're hitting a tipping point. EVs are no longer just green, quote unquote. They're starting to make financial sense upfront and long term. And, what people don't get a lot around here is that they're better cars.
Yeah.
They're scared of the new technology, that they're scared of replacing the battery, they're scared of running out of charge. But overall, the cars are better.
Yeah.
And any concerns you have been addressed. They're in the pipeline coming to a dealership near you eventually.
There's pros and cons to each, but if you do a list, look at the pros and cons of each gas and electric. The pros are just way much in favor of EVs, except for maybe 0.01% of people who have very specific needs. Researchers at one of our local universities has filed for 2 patents relating to defrosting air source heat pumps in the winter. And I wanted to talk about this because we talked about it on the show just a month or 2 ago. I have air source heat pump cooling my house here in frigid prairies of Canada, where it can get to minus 40 in the winter. And the one issue I was having was ice building up sometimes in the winter. And it would kind of depend mostly on the outside humidity. If we had some humid days, it would tend to build up more. So there's a fan on the outside unit, and enough ice would build up on the fan that the fan would stop spinning, and I'd get an error message, and I'd have to go out and, knock the ice off. So I added a heat tape cable around the edge of the fan, and that was enough to do it. I have it on a timer in the winter, so it's on for a couple hours, then off for a couple hours just to make sure. And then ice was building up underneath because water was dripping off the unit and the ice was collecting underneath, and it was turning into a fairly large iceberg that was eventually going to touch the machine. So I put a heat mat underneath it as well. And that's on a timer. It doesn't have to run all the time, but just to kind of keep the ice at bay. And I've had it for 3 winters now, and I'm pretty sure they changed the software for it. So I wasn't getting as much ice in the first year of having it.
All right.
And I think what was happening was they realized that frost was building up on the units themselves. So they instituted this defrost cycle where warm liquid goes out to the outside unit, melts the snow or ice or frost, but I was getting more dripping down. So, they solved one problem, but not necessarily both problems, but that's what they're looking into at the University of Saskatchewan, where we live. And there's researchers that, have figured out a way. They say, we saw an average of a 50% increase in heating efficiency compared to current air source heat pumps on the market. And the new system could also humidify indoor spaces, keeping homes more comfortable during the winter. Unfortunately, they don't explain that in the article, so I can't tell you how.
Maybe they melt the condensed ice and send it indoors. I was thinking when the robots take over, you might want some distilled water from your heat pump to drink while you hide.
Well, to go along with my snow cones that I might be getting off the machine. But so they've filed some patents for this. So this is, probably a long way from commercial adoption, but I thought it was interesting because, I've been having this exact problem and we talked about it on the show. Their simulations also showed a 10 to 35% reduction in annual energy use compared to a standard heat pump, which means both lower emissions and lower heating bills. So I'm sure this defrost cycle that I'm talking about, where it sends warm liquid out to the outside unit, that's probably not the most efficient thing. Like that costs some energy for sure. Right. Yeah. So with the research they've done, the patents they've filed, this looks like they've, maybe solved this problem.
Well, hopefully major heat pump makers will buy into this patent and use them. They have made technological improvements in heat pumps.
Yeah.
But most of them stop around minus 25. Is that fair?
Yeah,
some minus 22.
Right. Yeah.
I've heard of things approaching minus 30. I don't know how well they work or if they're on the market.
Well, the efficiency really drops. So once you get down that cold, sure, you can maybe make it work, but then you're just at a 1-to-1 efficiency compared to, normal electric. But, it reminds me a lot of electric cars. The new Blade batteries from China, they're going to be amazing. They're going to charge super fast. But the current batteries are good enough and the current heat pumps are good enough. But, we're just in early days and all of this stuff is getting better.
So would you recommend a heat pump to a person in our climate, which gets very cold, without having to, because the expense of your heating goes up with natural gas?
It's not for everybody. Around here, because it gets so frigid, you do have to prepare to spend a little more. There's more options than when I did mine. So I think there's good options out there if you really want to do it. In most places, even most places in Canada, your heating bill will go down. Yeah. But here your heating bill will go up, unfortunately, because of the very, very frigid temperatures.
So we live on the prairies of Canada where there's 5 or 6 million people who experience very cold weather. We're not north, but we're in a place that gets cold. And we always complain that, people aren't going to make stuff for us because even Norway, where electric cars are taking off to 100% of sales, most of the population there doesn't get like we do. They get minus 20. Yeah. And it's a whole different world. But you and I own EVs, by the way, if you're new to the show. They work fine. They work better than gas cars.
You preheat them and you're fine. But it's because we're kind of in the middle of the continent. We're kind of in the middle of North America. We're so far away from any oceans that, oceans always have a moderating effect on your weather. So Norway is typically warmer than us.
Yeah, and even Alaska influenced by the ocean, and it's not us. They should be testing cars here. They always test cars in Scandinavia or Alaska. They should test them right here. I'd be happy to help out. CATL, that's the world's largest battery maker. They're a Chinese company. They make more batteries than anyone else. Their new product event happened Tuesday in China. It is now Tuesday where we live, but because the world is round, things happen that way. This is from Car News China and many other sources, but I liked the way Car News China covered this. The world's second largest battery maker, BYD, who is also a car maker, had some groundbreaking new tech. We were wondering how they would respond to BYD, who makes cars and are the second biggest battery maker in the world. They released their Blade 2 battery that we've been talking about. Great cold weather performance, great charging speed, very, very fast, almost equivalent to gas, depending how you look at it. And we were waiting to see how they would respond. So on April 21st, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, that might make more sense to you, CATL officially launched its third generation coolant battery during the company's 2026 CATL Tech Day event. The ternary lithium battery boosts a volumetric, bear with me, people, okay? A lot of engineers listening to this, but a lot of people are going to say, this is too much tech talk, James. Explain it to me. The ternary lithium battery boasts a volumetric energy density of 600 watt-hours per liter and a gravimetric energy density of 280 watt-hours per kilogram. So this is the thing, the energy density. How much energy can you fit into a space and weight of a battery? It's important. It's especially important for cars because you want to reduce the weight. They're heavier than they need to be, maybe necessarily.
Yeah, and that's why gasoline has been so popular over the last 100 years, because the energy density, the amount of energy in a gallon of gasoline is a lot. It's really quite fantastic. You know, it's just the downside of burning it is killing the planet.
So this is, I think we'll talk about the weight of it mostly. The 280 watt hours per kilogram is the thing. And Tesla, by comparison, I think is around 242 comparatively speaking right now. So, and by comparison, the cheaper lithium iron phosphate batteries are 160 for Tesla. So the lithium iron phosphate, they're popular in cars that don't have the biggest range.
Yeah.
But you can charge them to 100% and leave them there, unlike other batteries where you have to charge only to 80% unless you're going on a long trip. And they're also cheaper, and they use less critical minerals like cobalt. So the new CATL 125 kilowatt hour pack, that's a big pack, okay?
Yeah.
100 is kind of the big pack for a car. SUVs, trucks require bigger batteries, but it weighs 625 kilograms, representing a 255 kilogram weight reduction. So that's pretty significant. That's, roughly 500 pounds weight reduction than the cheaper low-density lithium iron phosphate batteries. So those low-density batteries are heavier, but that's a pretty significant weight reduction in a car, because then suddenly, you've got more room for, passengers, and it goes further because you have
less weight to carry around.
Less weight to carry around, which is a lot better. So, but Brian, I didn't know this. There's also performance improvements when you improve the weight of a battery. The 0 to 100 kilometer per hour acceleration was reduced by 0.6 seconds, so it's faster because it's got less weight. Its overtaking parallel hazard window decreased by 12%. So they do this test where you have to overtake something that's on the highway because there's a hazard. You can do that 12% faster. The famous moose test. Are you familiar with the moose test? Do you remember the moose test? The moose test is basically on a test track where there's a moose, and then suddenly you have to go off to the left and back onto the road again to avoid it without braking. That speed increased by 8% without rollovers, so you can go faster without rolling over.
Yeah, well, it's a lighter, more nimble car because the battery is more dense.
The body roll angle, which would be involved in that moose test, was reduced by 6.5%. Emergency avoidance capability improved by 15 to 25%. This is technical safety stuff. 100 kilometers to 0. If you're going 100 kilometers, the distance of braking shortened by 1.44 meters. Which is important. And this is because the pack is lighter. It's not just range that is affected by these things. So critical chassis components, braking system, suspension, rubber bushings, they saw a 40% lifespan increase because of a lighter battery. So it makes a difference. The tire life was extended by 30%, increasing from 30 to 40,000 kilometers for a set of tires to 40 to 50. So that's also nice. So these weight improvements, we've never talked about this before. There's all kinds of advantages to having improved batteries that are lighter with the same energy. The battery's compact design was reduced by 112 liters of volume, equivalent to 3 standard 20-inch suitcases. That provides passengers with additional headroom. The battery features CATL's thermoelectric separation technology. So when you pack all these batteries into a big pack under your car, they have technology to separate them thermally. So if one of the batteries gets a defect and starts getting hot, it doesn't cause a runaway effect, which is the same in the Blade battery. So when you see a battery fire, it's because one cell got hot or a group of cells got hot and they spread to other cells and kept going. So this separates the thermal management from electronic circuits. This improves the safety, but also improves the efficiency of the cooling, because if you have to cool that battery, especially when you're charging it at very high rates, it gets more efficient with this new design, the way they have it separated. At this event, CATL introduced its Coolin condensed matter battery, featuring a gravimetric energy density of 350 watt-hours per kilogram and a volumetric density of 760 watt-hours per liter. So 350 is a pretty big number. In fact, it's twice of what we used to be talking about recently. The battery pack weighs less than 650 kilograms, enabling executive-class sedans to achieve 1,500 kilometers range. Chinese range, which is generous.
Yeah.
But still, it's a lot. And full-size SUVs to reach 1,000 kilometers range with these new batteries, which I still say you don't need, but consumers, even in China, especially in China, maybe even are demanding such things. So CATL's condensed battery is actually what other manufacturers call a semi-solid state or liquid solid battery. And this battery is already used in eVTOLs. That's flying drones that carry people, because they have lots of energy. And yeah, they Autoflight, a company CATL invested in. CATL wants to apply this new battery to passenger vehicles, but also flying drones that carry people, which we're not sure how that's going to unfold, but they're a thing now, especially in China. These batteries are significantly lighter than BYD's latest advanced batteries. So that's a lot of technical talk, but here's the stats that matter. CATL has launched its third generation Shenzhen LFP lithium iron phosphate battery, featuring charging speeds of 10 to 35% in 1 minute. I don't know why they have a 1 minute charging speed, but it's interesting. But here's the thing, 10 to 80% in 3 minutes and 44 seconds. That's what most people currently charge on the highway, is 10 to 80%. They get down to about 10% and they stop at 80 because it gets slower after that. Well, it's only 3 minutes and 44 seconds, which is faster than BYD. And 10 to 98% in 6 minutes and 27 seconds. And 10 to 98% in 9 minutes at minus 30 Celsius, which is 3 minutes faster than BYD. So one company comes out with a great battery, and 2 months later, the competition leapfrogs them. That's the world we're living in. It's always good to have battery breakthroughs, Brian, are the biggest thing we can talk about on the show, because they store renewables and they speed the electrification of transportation, and that's important for the climate.
And that's what we love to cover here. The Clean Energy Show is an independent podcast powered by listeners like you. Patreon.com/cleanenergypod, where you can join for as little as $1 a month. You can get ad-free episodes, early access, exclusive behind-the-scenes content. There's also a private Discord, discounts on merch, and you can even score a shout-out on the show. Patreon.com/cleanenergypod. And thanks to all of our supporters for keeping independent climate journalism alive. Coming up next, it's the lightning round.
It never happens at a good time. The pipe bursts at midnight. The heater quits on the coldest night. Suddenly, you're overwhelmed. That's when HomeServe is here. For $4.99 a month, you're never alone. Just call their 24/7 hotline and a local pro is on the way. Trusted by millions, HomeServe delivers peace of mind when you need it most. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to homeserve.com. That's homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
This podcast is supported by the original organic bedding and bath brand, Koyuchi.
So, April is Earth Month. And one way you can celebrate and support our planet is by making small changes that actually matter, like switching to brands that support sustainable living. Koyuchi has spent 35 years pioneering quality organic sheets, bedding, and bath towels, all with a focus on responsible sourcing and manufacturing. Plus, Koyuchi products contain 0 harsh chemicals or dangerous toxins that can seep into your skin. Koyuchi's crisp, cool, luxuriously soft sheets are ethically made and certified fair trade with naturally breathable, pre-washed organic cotton. So this Earth Month, make a small yet stylish upgrade that actually matters to your health and the planet. Get Koyuchi. Right now, get 15% off your entire order when you visit Koyuchi.com. That's Koyuchi.com to get 15% off. Koyuchi.com.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
It's time for the lightning round.
The Lightning Round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Okay, let's bring it down a bit here. The massive Atlantic current system that helps regulate Earth's climate might be in more trouble than we thought. New research suggests the models showing the biggest slowdown are actually the most accurate, and scientists are calling that very concerning. We're talking about the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, or AMOC. Basically, a giant ocean conveyor belt is already at its weakest point in about 1,600 years because of climate change. And here's the crazy part. Scientists have already seen warning signs of a tipping point, and we know that this system has already collapsed before in Earth's history during warming cycles. This would be very bad news. If it happens again, it wouldn't just be a bad day at the beach. It could have major, even catastrophic impacts across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, basically everywhere but Asia. So This is a big deal, and we should and can be doing more. A private investigator accused of running a global hacking for hire operation that targeted environmental activists made his first appearance before the federal judge who would oversee his eventual trial in Manhattan, United States. He was arrested in London in 2024 and extradited to the United States. The indictment alleged that Mr. Forlett was contracted by a Washington lobbying firm that was working for an unidentified major oil and gas corporation headquartered in Texas. So we have two stories here to start the lightning round. One, the planet is in danger. And two, fossil fuel interests are screwing with everything, trying to destroy the planet for their own pockets. Only 35% of Americans say the environment is in good shape, according to a new Gallup poll. And those people who thought it was in good shape, they all live in Florida. An alligator pointed a gun at their head while they were answering the survey.
Interesting.
From the Financial Times, UK Prime Minister Miliband is to unveil a move to de-link U.S. gas and electricity prices. We had a letter about this a couple weeks ago.
Yes, UK gas.
UK gas. United Kingdom, the electricity prices are tied to natural gas prices, which of course are up because of conflict, and it has been one of the major generators of electricity, so they just tied it to that. But now renewables are taking over, and we were talking about how cheap is it really to run an EV in the UK. Well, because of this, it makes it more difficult. We talked about this last week, and it was not able to compete with fossil fuels because it was tied to gas. Well, now looks like they're going to decouple that, and we'll cover that further on the show. It's time for a CES Fast Fact. The world's top 100 oil and gas companies banked more than $30 million every hour in unearned profit in the first month of the U.S. Israeli war on Iran, according to exclusive analysis for The Guardian. $30 million an hour pouring in extra because of this conflict. The Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis says Delhi's draft EV policy that spans from 2024 to 2030 is leaning into something called FOMOnomics, a word never before uttered on this show. FOMOnomics, Brian, is buy early, save more, because the incentives start high for early adopters and gradually shrink over time.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, you say, okay, I'm going to get my EV now. That's actually happening in Canada because the rebate for EVs goes down every year. So I've got pressure on me to make a move.
Yeah, and the sooner you switch to clean energy, the sooner you can stop paying the fuel costs of dirty energy.
That's damn straight true. EV sales grew by over 20% last year worldwide and now make up around 1 in 4 new car sales. We've talked about that before in the show. There's new data confirming those numbers. Battery storage grew faster than any other power technology in 2025. We touched on this earlier. 110 gigawatts of new storage capacity was added exceeding the largest ever annual capacity additions for natural gas. This is an 11 times increase since 2021 for installed battery capacity. Solar growth was off the charts, as you said, 600 terawatt hours added worldwide, the largest ever increase in a single year for any power generation technology. Solar was the largest contributor to lower global energy supply growth, the first time ever a modern renewable has done so, says the IEA. The largest renewable project in United States history is a 3.5 gigawatt wind farm in New Mexico, and it is beginning to deliver power to California and Arizona. That's right, it's located in New Mexico, but is powering other states. The California ISO grid has taken operational control and will count as in-state wind, even though it ain't in-state. But they paid for it out of state to put power in-state. This is something people don't really think about very often, especially our politicians. There are solutions out there. If you can't have something in your own jurisdiction, you pay somebody else to provide it for you, and then everybody's happy. This will speed up California's push for 100% wind, water, and solar objectives. Tesla launches unsupervised robotaxi in small areas of Dallas and Houston. ARK Invest says ride hail is now $2.80 per mile. That's the cost. And they think it'll go down to 25 cents per mile for electric autonomous taxis without a driver. Eventually. That's the potential cost decline from human-driven ride hail to autonomous robotaxis at scale. At scale means not now, but when they scale up and start competing with each other, it's going to become a fraction of the cost, and that's why we think it's going to prevail as a dominant form of transportation. China will seek to double its supply of non-fossil fuel energy by 2035 in a plan that analysts see as a big boost to Beijing's green targets. So China comes up with big plans, 5-year plans. Now they've got a plan to 2035 that says the targets are going to increase, so they're going hard on wind, but they're also doing some other bad things with fossil fuels. Aalborg University in Finland has done a new calculation comparing current nuclear to current solar costs. I say current because costs change. Nuclear is going up. Nuclear proponents want it to go down, and it's possible that it could, but that would take a great deal of manufacturing nuclear for it to happen. For solar, they made sure to include the costs of storage, grid expansion, stabilization, and flexibilization. In other words, you can't just say we're going to compare the cost of solar panels and inverters and to nuclear. There's other costs involved when you put solar because it's not all in one place like nuclear. And they concluded that renewables were 4 cents per kilowatt hour and nuclear was at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's a pretty significant price difference right now, and we see renewables getting cheaper, definitely still getting cheaper over time, especially the battery aspect. You know, solar has come down really a long way. It's hard to get too much cheaper, but if they improve the technology, which they seem to be doing, and new panels come out, then you have a great reduction. They might even cost a bit more, but they'll give you a lot more electricity output for the same amount of money. So the disposal of nuclear waste isn't part of this calculation, by the way, and it often isn't. And finally, this week, we talked about this before. The law was passed in France for putting solar panels on every parking lot that is more than 80 spaces. We talked about this, I think, a couple of years ago. Well, now it's happening. It's for real now. It's passed. Parking lots over a certain size have 3 to 5 years to cover at least half of their surface area with solar canopies or face fines. The projected output, this is kind of sweet, 11 gigawatts of capacity from parking lots. That's a lot of electricity.
And then you get some nice shade on your car, so your car doesn't just bake in the sun all day.
Maybe it's raining. Maybe you get a little shelter from the rain. All kinds of advantages.
All right, you can find us on social media apps like TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky. We are Clean Energy Pod. That Patreon is patreon.com/cleanenergypod, and the email cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And as always, remember to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast.
And remember to join our Patreon. That's what makes us work, people. Patreon, if you can, take the time now. Today's the day to do it. Patreon.com/cleanenergypod. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. And thank you to our Patreon Clean Club executive members, our most generous tier. where we have Green Bastard, Brett Rowley, and Tiernan, and they're so generous they get a shout out every week. Thank you all for supporting our podcast. I look forward to seeing you again in 7 days.
See you next week.